The UN Special Envoy for Syria is expected to join today's session. Turkey, Russia and Iran are the sponsors, the guarantors of these talks. Those three states brokered a ceasefire in Syria last year. That led to these Astana peace talks and the formation of de-escalation zones in Syria. Let's speak to our Middle East reporter, Abubakr al Shamahi, who is at the talks. Have those three countries given an analysis of how effective the de-escalation zones have been?
Well, so far the talks have been behind closed doors. On Thursday they were behind closed doors for the whole of the day. Nothing was made public from those talks, and it's the same on Friday as well, up until the press conference that we're going to be expecting later in the day, there or thereabouts after 5 p.m. local time. In terms of the de-escalation zones, of course, they have reduced the violence in Syria, and really all the guarantor states have been trying to push the idea that these de-escalation zones have been successful in this regard. If you look at various different provinces in Syria, such as Idlib, for example, where these de-escalation zones have been implemented to a degree, violence has reduced. However, at the same time, violence is still continuing. Yes, there's a ceasefire, but on the ground, there's still fighting, and there's still airstrikes, Syrian regime airstrikes. Just the other day on Idlib, killed at least 18 people there in eastern Ghouta as well, which is a suburb of Damascus. You have 400,000 people there who are still besieged in opposition-held areas by the regime. And so, yes, the de-escalation zones have reduced the violence, but it's still there, there's still fighting, and there's still a long way left to go.
Abubakr, give us an analysis of what you believe the future might be if peace is to come to Syria. Can those three guarantor states, as well as the various parties in Syria, reach some sort of deal that brings about peace, or does the United States have to be involved? Russia has just said the US should pull its troops out of Syria. There's no reason for them to be there anymore. Does the US have to be involved in a future peace deal?
Well, those Russian statements by the Russian envoy to Syria indicate really Russia's position in Syria, and it's a position of ascendancy. And if we look at, for example, the Russian, this Astana process is essentially a Russian pet project. You've also got the Syrian National Dialogue Congress that the Russians have been pushing, that is set to be held in Sochi. That's been delayed twice already. One of the reasons was actually a Turkish objection to the participation of figures associated with the PKK, which of course Turkey considers a terrorist organization. And yet all the sides now seem to be agreeing that that is going to happen, and that perhaps we might find a peaceful resolution or a peaceful political resolution that comes as a result of that National Dialogue Congress whenever it eventually takes place. And yes, the Russian envoy's comments on America as well, and on the US presence in Syria, also indicates Russia's position on the ground. It believes that Russia is the primary actor in terms of the international powers in Syria. It said that the US doesn't have any excuses to keep its troops on the ground now that the fight against Daesh is seen to have been won. And what Russia is essentially saying is that the Syrian regime needs to expand its authority over the state. It now needs to go into areas where the US backed forces have been present, so the SDF, who are backed by the United States in Raqqa province and in other areas. The regime has indicated that now that the fight against Daesh is over, that they'll now go into those areas and bring them back into the fold of the Syrian state. We're going to see whether they're actually going to be able to do that, but just on the basis of the words of the Russian envoy, it seems that they're really trying to emphasize that they're the primary international power in Syria, not the United States, not the West.
That is TRT World's Abubakr al Shamahi in Astana, Kazakhstan. Abubakr, thank you.